Hello and welcome to Lab. My name is Ku and this is our laboratory for learning. Welcome back. Today we're going to look at another couple of films from that article we've been looking at about the top 10 films of 2025 so far. It's been a fun exploration of advanced level vocabulary, especially if you're into films, film critique, if you like reading or writing about films, especially using higher level vocabulary. So we're going to take a look at two more films today and really dive into that vocabulary, look at some grammatical expressions, and hopefully supercharge your vocabulary. As always, we have a link to the full article in the description below, so if you want to take a look at that full article, go ahead and do that. A lot of fun, interesting vocabulary words, even words we won't be able to get to in this video. So definitely take a look at that, explore some of those film critiques yourself. Like always, at the end of every video, I will also do some shadowing. So that means I will read our selections at proper native pace so that you can follow along, do some listening exercises, listen for pronunciation, look at the rhythm of the language, the pacing, and really sort of help your overall listening skills. Let's begin our next Lab. Bring Them Down. Barry Keoghan, Christopher Abbott, and Cole Meany star in this dark and bloody Western-style thriller about a feud between sheep farmers in remote rural Ireland. Meany and Abbott, who speak their dialogue in Irish, play a Laconic father and son who lose their two prize rams only to discover that they have been stolen by their neighbor's shiftless son. Accusations are made, simmering resentments reach boiling point, and violence ensues. But then Christopher Andrews, the film's debut writer-director, rewinds his story and replays it from a revelatory new perspective. Suddenly, a hard-boiled story of crime and retribution becomes an aching tragedy about desperate economic hardship, youthful stupidity, male pride, and the traumas passed down from taciturn fathers to taciturn sons. Bring Them Down is tough to watch, but it's beautifully shot, cleverly plotted, and stunningly powerful. All right, well done. Whoa, what a lot of vocabulary words, a lot of fun new words I think we're going to dive into and learn a little bit today. Let's start with our first vocabulary word, and that's the word feud. So feud is a noun that means a long fight between groups or people. If you remember Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet, those types of things, they were involved in a feud. Families hate each other for a long time. Let's look at our example sentence. The two families had a bitter feud. It means they've been fighting each other for a long time. Okay, the second vocabulary word is rural. It's not really a hard word to understand, but those two R sounds can be quite difficult. So we'll say it again, rural. Rural is an adjective that means relating to the countryside. So not in the city. It's outside the city, so it's in a rural area. Our example sentence, they moved to a rural village. Good, so this is a fun word that just means not in the city, in the countryside. So this is a good word to practice, especially if the R sound is not so pronounced in your home language. Okay, the next vocabulary word, laconic. Laconic is an adjective that means using few words. So that person you know who doesn't speak very much, but when they do say some words, they're very important. Laconic. Our example sentence, his laconic reply ended the talk. So someone who doesn't say very much, but when they do, it's important. It's very similar to our next vocabulary word, which is taciturn. Taciturn is also an adjective that means quiet and not talking too much. These words are synonyms and used to describe someone who doesn't talk so much, but when they say something, it is very meaningful. Our example sentence for taciturn is, his taciturn reply ended the talk. I just replaced taciturn with laconic so you can see how they fit in the same sort of sentence. So very good. Two words that sort of mean something very similar. So the next vocabulary word is the word ram. Ram isn't so advanced. It's just a noun that means male sheep. Now, it's important to realize that it's different than the word lamb. Certain languages have the R and L sound kind of very close together. So in this case, ram with an R is a male sheep, different than lamb. It's a baby sheep. As we can see in our example sentence, the ram was grazing in the field. So this was a male sheep grazing in the field. So in our movie, it was the thing that was stolen. Since they're sheep farmers, a male sheep is a ram. Okay, the next vocabulary word, shiftless. Shiftless is an adjective that means lazy, without ambition. Someone who just sits around in the house all day, doesn't do very much, we say is shiftless. If we look at our example sentence, he was seen as a shiftless man. It means he didn't do very much, very lazy, wasn't very active or ambitious. Shiftless. Our next vocabulary word is accusation. Accusation is a noun. It's a noun that is a statement that someone did something wrong. So the verb is to accuse someone, to say someone did something wrong. The noun of that is an accusation. If we look at our example sentence, she made an accusation against him. So she accused him of something, made an accusation. All right, the next vocabulary word, simmering. Simmering is an adjective that shows signs of anger or feeling just below the surface. Our example sentence, there was a simmering tension in the room. Simmering is a cooking term. When something's about to boil, the water is there, it's about to boil, it's getting very hot. In this case, it describes a feeling, maybe something is getting very intense. Maybe someone's getting very angry, but they're not angry yet. It's just simmering. And so this is a good word to describe that transition from being patient and okay to very, very angry. That middle section, simmering. Okay, the next vocabulary word, resentment. Resentment is a noun that means a feeling of anger because of unfairness. You can resent someone because you think it isn't fair that they may have gotten something that you feel you deserved. So if we look at our example sentence, he held deep resentment over the loss. This person thinks that they should have won, and maybe he lost unfairly, so there is some resentment. The next vocabulary word is ensue. So ensue is a verb, and ensue means to happen as a result. So if we look at our example sentence, after the mistake, silence ensued. So it ensued because there was a mistake. Ensue means something happens, and usually it's because something else happens. So it's a verb that describes the result of something. Okay, the next vocabulary word is a fun one to say, revelatory. Revelatory. It just rolls right off the tongue. It's an adjective that means showing something hidden or surprising. It comes from our base word to reveal. Right? When you reveal something like a secret or you reveal, your surprise, that adjective is revelatory. If we look at our example sentence, we see her words were revelatory. So they were surprising. No one expected them. She revealed them in an interesting way. So again, a fun word to practice, especially if you're doing a tongue twister or something like that, revelatory. The next vocabulary word is retribution. Retribution is a noun that means punishment for a wrong or crime. So as we look to our example sentence, he feared retribution for his actions. So retribution has this feeling of you're going to get someone back for something. Punishment for something they did wrong. In our movie, the sheep was stolen, and so there needs to be some retribution. They're going to get back at this person for stealing something from them. Okay, the next vocabulary word is the word plot. And the plot is another one of these words that can be different parts of speech. In this particular selection, it was used as a verb. And in this case, when used as a verb, to plot means to plan something, usually in secret. So a lot of times we see like the evil villain do this, right? This is when he's plotting something. It's very secretive. If we look to our example sentence, they plotted to surprise their friend. So they were planning something in secret. You often hear it sometimes as the secret plot. Okay, but this time it's used as a verb, to plot something. Okay, let's look at a few idiomatic phrases here. So these are phrases that are usually set phrases that mean something special. The first one we'll look at is reach a boiling point, or reach boiling point. It's a phrase that means to become very angry or tense. If we think back to one of our previous vocabulary words, the word simmering means to reach a boiling point. So in this case, our example sentence might read, the argument reached boiling point. Okay, so this means that it reached the point where someone became angry. So if you think about water, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, it's simmering, and then finally, boiling point. It starts to boil over. So this is usually describing someone who's very angry or very intense. Okay, our next vocabulary word, keeping with the theme of boiling, is the phrase hard-boiled story. So in this phrase, hard-boiled is an adjective that describes a story, and this story is tough and realistic. You know, we often think of hard-boiled eggs that have that little, the shell around them has been boiled, so the eggs themselves are a little bit harder and tougher. So hard-boiled means something that's tough and realistic. Our example sentence, he wrote a hard-boiled story about life in the city. So this wasn't nice, it's not neat, it's not sweet. Hard-boiled usually means tough and realistic. So let's read that selection again, and this time we'll look at the vocabulary words and we'll sort of explain them in context. So bring them down. Barry Keoghan, Christopher Abbott, and Cole Meany star in this dark and bloody Western-style thriller about a feud between sheep farmers in remote rural Ireland. So a feud, a long fight between families in rural Ireland, so not near the city, in the countryside of Ireland. Meany and Abbott, who speak their dialogue in Irish, play a laconic father and son who lose their two prize rams. So laconic is people who don't say very many words, but when they do, it's very important. And they lose their two prize rams, male sheep. Accusations are made. Simmering resentments reach boiling point. So accusations, again, to accuse someone of something they may have done wrong. Simmering means they're underneath the surface. They're getting a bit angry. Resentment is when you think you have been wronged. You think someone has done something wrong to you, and then reach a boiling point. So they finally reach the point where you become very angry and you get very aggressive. And violence ensues. So violence happens because of this stealing of the ram, because of these accusations, because of this ensues. But then Christopher Andrews, the film's debut writer-director, rewinds his story and replays it from a revelatory new perspective. So revelatory means new and surprising, new perspective. Suddenly, a hard-boiled story, so this story which was natural, realistic, kind of tough, of crime and retribution becomes an aching tragedy about desperate economic hardship, youthful stupidity, male pride, and the traumas passed down from taciturn fathers to taciturn sons. Again, taciturn is very similar to laconic. They don't speak very much, but when they do, it means something. Bring Them Down is a tough to watch, but it's beautifully shot, cleverly plotted, and stunningly powerful. Okay, let's look at our second film review. This is the film Misericordia. Let's take a look at what the author has to say. Misericordia, engaging film, is full of surprises. It starts as a drama about Jeremy, a young man returning to his small village in the lush French countryside for a funeral, then becomes a quietly comic take on desire, along with a thriller about covering up a murder. The film deftly carries the audience with it through all these turns. Jeremy is an opportunist, but also an enigma. He may have had a passion for his former boss and mentor, the village baker, who died. The baker's widow definitely seems interested in Jeremy, who grew up as the best friend of her son, Vincent. He now angrily suspects Jeremy of wanting to sleep with his mother. Jeremy does not want that, but he does find himself in a reluctant affair with the local priest. The joke is that so many people lust after the unremarkable Jeremy, and the suspense comes from the small-town eyes and local police wondering what happened when Vincent mysteriously disappears. Misericordia, Latin for mercy, was nominated for 8 Caesar Awards, the French equivalent of the Oscars, including film and director. But its human comedy lands easily with audiences everywhere. So, a mouthful of words, new vocabulary. So let's take a look at a few of those. Our first vocabulary word is engaging. Engaging is an adjective that means interesting and pleasing. It's more descriptive than just saying, oh, that's interesting. If we look at our example sentence, engaging stories keep the reader hooked. So again, it's more intense at a higher level than the word interesting. Engaging means to capture the audience's attention. The second vocabulary word is lush. Lush is a fun adjective that means rich and full in a pleasant way. It often describes areas that have lots of plants or that have a tropical climate. Let's take a look at our example sentence. Lush gardens covered the hills. It means many flowers, many plants, a lot of green, maybe wet or tropical. So this idea of lush environments, the opposite of desert and dry. The next vocabulary word is deftly. Deftly is an adverb that describes something in a skillful and quick way. If we look at our example sentence, she deftly moved through the crowd. So she did so in a quick and skillful way. She wasn't necessarily sneaking, but she was making her way through and doing it in a very skillful and clever way. Okay, the next word that we need to take a look at is opportunist. Opportunist is a noun that describes a person or someone who takes advantage of situations. You may be familiar with the noun opportunity. Opportunity is describing that situation. A person who takes advantage of opportunities is an opportunist. If we look at our example sentence, the opportunist took the job without delay. So this is someone who took advantage of an opportunity. Our next vocabulary word is enigma. Enigma is a noun, and it describes a person or a thing that is mysterious, difficult to describe, difficult to understand. Our example sentence is very clear. He is an enigma to his friends. So if you ask his friends to describe him, it's very difficult for them. He's mysterious in nature. It's very hard to come up with the words that may describe this person. Maybe because there's lots of things to describe him, or maybe the ways to describe him are very interesting or unique. But an enigma is something that's very interesting, very mysterious. All right, our next vocabulary word is reluctant. Reluctant is an adjective that means not willing or eager. Our example sentence, she was reluctant to speak in class. So this describes someone who doesn't want to do something, or they're very nervous about it, or they're very slow to do it. They're not willing. So if you're reluctant to do something, you're reluctant to speak English, all right, in front of native speakers, you're not very willing to do it, then we might say you are reluctant. The next vocabulary word, unremarkable. Unremarkable is an adjective that means not special or unusual. So un means not, and remarkable means special, so not special. If we look at our example sentence, the movie was unremarkable and slow. So this sort of describes something that's not good or bad. It's just unremarkable. It's just boring, even. You don't even care to remark on it. It's not special in any way. Okay, well done with all of those vocabulary words. A lot of fun, interesting new words. Hopefully you found a few that you found interesting. Maybe you will use in your own writing, your own conversations. So now let's read the selection again, and let's put all of those words that we learned into context. Misericordia. Engaging film is full of surprises. Engaging is very, very interesting. It starts as a drama about Jeremy, a young man returning to his small village in the lush French countryside for a funeral. So the French area that is full of plants and flowers, maybe very tropical environment. Then becomes a quietly comic take on desire, along with a thriller about covering up a murder. The film deftly carries the audience, so swiftly and smoothly in an interesting way, with it through all these turns. Jeremy is an opportunist, someone who takes advantage of an opportunity, but also an enigma, very mysterious, difficult to describe. He may have had a passion for his former boss and mentor, the village baker, who died. The baker's widow definitely seems interested in Jeremy, who grew up as the best friend of her son Vincent. He now angrily suspects Jeremy of wanting to sleep with his mother. Jeremy does not want that, but he does find himself in a reluctant affair with the local priest. Reluctant means not really willing, not really, wanting to do it, feeling of, uncertainty. The joke is that so many people lust after the unremarkable Jeremy. So lust, think of him in a sexual way. In this unremarkable, he's not really interesting in any way, not good or bad, just boring. And the suspense comes from the small town eyes and local police wondering what happened when Vincent mysteriously disappears. Misericordia, Latin for mercy, was nominated for 8 Caesar Awards, the French equivalent of the Oscars, including film and director, but its human comedy lands easily with audiences everywhere. Shadowing, Bring Them Down. Barry Keoghan, Christopher Abbott, and Colm Meaney star in this dark and bloody Western-style thriller about a feud between sheep farmers in remote rural Ireland. Meaney and Abbott, who speak their dialogue in Irish, play a laconic father and son who lose their 2 prize rams, only to discover that they have been stolen by their neighbor's shiftless son. Accusations are made, simmering resentments reach a boiling point, and violence ensues. But then Christopher Andrews, the film's debut writer-director, rewinds his story and replays it from a revelatory new perspective. Suddenly, a hard-boiled story of crime and retribution becomes an aching tragedy about desperate economic hardship, youthful stupidity, male pride, and the traumas passed down from taciturn fathers to taciturn sons. Bring Them Down is tough to watch, but it's beautifully shot, cleverly plotted, and stunningly powerful. Misericordia. Engaging film is full of surprises. It starts as a drama about Jeremy, a young man returning to his small village in the lush French countryside for a funeral, then becomes a quietly comic take on desire along with a thriller about covering up a murder. The film deftly carries the audience with it through all these turns. Jeremy is an opportunist, but also an enigma. He may have had a passion for his former boss and mentor, the village baker, who died. The baker's widow definitely seems interested in Jeremy, who grew up as the best friend of her son, Vincent. He now angrily suspects Jeremy of wanting to sleep with his mother. Jeremy does not want that, but he does find himself in a reluctant affair with the local priest. The joke is that so many people lust after the unremarkable Jeremy, and the suspense comes from the small town eyes and local police wondering what happened when Vincent mysteriously disappears. Misericordia, Latin for mercy, was nominated for 8 Caesar Awards, the French equivalent of the Oscars, including film and director, but its human comedy lands easily with audiences everywhere. So there we have it. Thanks for joining me today to take a look at this article and these 2 new films and the description of these films by authors who use very advanced English vocabulary. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you were able to maybe enjoy the shadowing session. Either way, if you want to see more articles or more videos about articles in English using either intermediate or advanced language, be sure to click on one of the other videos. As always, the link to the original article is in the description below if you want to check out the source material. And like I always say, this is part of a collab, so definitely take one of those vocabulary words you've learned and make a new example sentence in the comments below. Thanks so much, I appreciate it, and I hope to see you in the next collab.